All right. Welcome to Black Swan Revelations. My name is Shane. I'm your host, and I'm back. We just got back from Phoenix. Just flew in maybe a couple of hours ago. So I actually just got home about a half an hour ago. So we are ready to roll tonight, starting a little bit early. I realized that when I was in Phoenix, I put the time for 10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time accidentally, because Phoenix is actually an hour ahead. So this is why I'm starting about 9 o'clock. A little tired. We were at the airport. What time were we at the airport at? 1 o'clock, something like that. So it's been a long day. So we're going to talk about what's coming up in November. And I think you know what that special day is. And no, it's not Thanksgiving. We're going to be talking about the election. And I'm interested to get your thoughts as we progress through this video. I think this is a good time to talk about this. We are approximately 26 days away, roughly, from the election, November 5th. It's not too far away. All right, let's stop the music. Let's just say hi to everyone. Let's see, we have J Row 49, aka Joshua, or some people like to say Yeshua. And then we have Darcy. How you doing, bro? Anthony Brainerd. That last name sounds familiar. Eric Welch, welcome to the show. Yes, it does feel like crazy times ahead. What's interesting, this is interesting here. I was in Phoenix. First of all, love the place. Great town to hang out. We went to the zoo, went to the wildlife park, all kinds of stuff. But one thing that I noticed, and maybe if somebody's on this channel, if you're from Phoenix, let me know what you think. But it feels like everything is picture perfect there in Phoenix. It's kind of weird. What do I mean, picture perfect? Are the people there perfect? No, I wouldn't say that. Is the terrain perfect? They're out in the desert? No. But what I noticed is a lot of wealth, especially in the area that we were in, which was Surprise, and also, what was the other area? Around Scottsdale. A lot of wealth. And what's interesting is as I was having my devotion, I was trying to go through Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. I was hoping to finish Deuteronomy, but I'm in the middle of Numbers right now, and these are some of my favorite books in the Old Testament. I love Leviticus. I love Numbers. In the past 2.5, almost 3 years, I've read each of these books about 15 times. So I'm starting to get familiar with these 5 books, and I'm going somewhere with this about Phoenix. These 5 books, they all interconnect. So when you go through Genesis, you get Joseph, and he makes a plea, if you will, makes some of his brothers swear that their ancestors will take his bones when they leave Egypt. Makes them swear. And then in Exodus, we get introduced to Moses for the first time, which we all know wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. And I'm beginning to also see that some of the portions of each one of these books have also been edited. I don't know if it was Eliezer, one of Aaron's 4 sons, probably one of his 2 sons didn't die by fireworks. Perhaps Joshua. I don't think Caleb, but perhaps Joshua edited some of the content. It feels like, because there's some times where there are paragraphs or there's parentheses or open, what do you call it? Open, close brackets to give us a snapshot of where they are in Canaan. Sometimes it'll be mentioned that it was just south of Dan. Well, we know that Dan didn't inherit that area until at the very end of the book of Joshua, but yet in Numbers and sometimes in Leviticus or in Exodus, we see this creep in where there's an editorial. So I know Moses didn't write that. Someone else wrote that in, but most likely one of the sons of Aaron, perhaps Aaron himself. No, Aaron died before Moses. And we know it wasn't Miriam because she died before Aaron. Most likely, I would say you could put money on one of the sons of Aaron or Joshua himself for editing a little bit of Deuteronomy, because obviously Moses dies at the end of Deuteronomy and we still have another chapter to go. So obviously somebody finished it off nicely, tidied it up with a nice little bow. So the reason why I press is one of the promises, one of the deals made in the first 5 books of the Old Testament was God was telling Israel that when things go well with you, don't forget me. Don't forget it was I that brought you out of Egypt. Don't forget that it was I that brought all the plagues upon Egypt and helped you spoil and ransack Egypt. Don't forget about that. When things go good in the land of Canaan, don't forget about me. When you enter a house that you never built and you start harvesting a crop that you've never planted and you get land that was given to you, remember me. Don't forget the Lord your God. And I don't want to say that Phoenix is forgetting who the Lord is, but if you have everything, why do you need God? If you have everything, if everything is taken care of, like you have just about every sports team, you have every golf course that you can imagine, you have just about every event that you can imagine in Phoenix. If you want hockey, you get hockey. Actually, they moved that over to Utah. But if you want basketball, you got the Phoenix Suns. If you want junior hockey, all kinds of stuff, high school basketball, football, you got the Cardinals as well. For baseball, sorry, that's football. And then for baseball, you have the Arizona Diamondbacks. Like you have everything. So that's the one thing that I experienced there is because you don't have any seasons, like here in Canada, we came back and it's October, and I think tomorrow it's probably going to go down to like 0 or +5. Right now, what would that be for you Americans? Basically, I want to say it's like 20, something like that, 15 or 20. So that tells you, and we were last week, it was like almost 50 in Arizona where we were, almost 50. And now we're looking at about 15, 20 in that range. That's quite a turn. But I noticed that everyone was influential, affluential, influential. And then like, when do you need God? Because you have everything. Like, when do you need it? And maybe you could build a case that when you have everything, you give credit to God because of your wealth, and you thank Him for your Humvee, and you thank Him for your motorhome and your pool and all kinds of stuff, and your membership at the clubs and all this kind of stuff. Maybe you get to that point where you're so thankful, and it's possible. It's very possible. I just know that if there's a little bit of hardship mixed in there, that also builds your character as well. It builds your character because you trust in the Lord. But if you have so much money, why do you need to trust in God? Because you have everything taken care of. This brings up the subject of Jacob's trouble. The whole purpose of Jacob's trouble is to wake up Israel, to cause Israel to exhaust all their resources, all their weapons, that when they don't work, that perhaps they will consider God and say, Lord, we need you. Otherwise, we are going to be annihilated. We are going to be erased from existence. We need you. That's the whole purpose of Jacob's trouble. Just read Isaiah, read Jeremiah, read Ezekiel. That's the purpose of Jacob's trouble. It got to a point where there was no more remedy. Every time God tried to punish Israel, they got more stubborn. And in fact, after the split between the tribes of the north and the southern tribes, Israel was very, very bad. Very bad. They worshiped just about every god under the sun. This is why if you're to do a theological dig in Israel, people are scratching their heads going, I thought these northern tribes worship one God. They did, but they also fell away. That's why they got carried away by the Assyrians. But Judah ended up being worse than them, because there is an example of what happens when you worship Molech and all these other gods, and you sacrifice your children, you dedicate them into your walls. There is a consequence of that because of the covenant that was made on Mount Sinai. There was a covenant made. The covenant was, if you do this, I will do this for you. I will bring rain. Your crops will grow. It'll be almost like the Garden of Eden itself. You'll live a long life if you follow all my commandments. But there's also a curse attached to it, that if you don't follow my commandments, you're going to be cursed. You're going to be cursed. So it won't protect you to say, like I hear so many people say, well, if you come against Israel, you're going to be cursed, and Muslim, you'll be blessed. If you curse, you'll be cursed. They're using something out of context, because that was presented to Abraham to protect him in the land of giants, that if anybody tried to take him out, they would be taken out with extreme prejudice. But today we use that verse all loose, not understanding that if you worship another god, you'll be cursed, especially if you're under the covenant. This is why Paul in Galatians was saying, look, why do you guys want to go back to that? Why do you want to enter into a curse with God? Why do you want to do that? It doesn't make any sense when you're going to fail miserably because you can't keep all the commandments. There's dozens and dozens and dozens. And if you miss one, it's like you broke them all. So this is why Judah ended up becoming worse than Israel. And when I mention Israel again, I'm talking about the 10 northern tribes. The tribe that basically you can look at it as the tribe of Joseph or the tribe of Ephraim. That's as a community, if you will. There's two nations. The nation of Joseph, the nation of Judah. It's the easiest way to remember it. So they fell away, and then also Judah did like 10 times worse. They were way worse than Israel was. And they ended up getting captured by the Babylonians, and they were mad at God just before that was happening. They were giving Jeremiah a tough time. They kept tossing him into a well. Why? Because they were upset that God was using other nations to punish them, to punish Israel. They were telling God, arguing with God, that he was not being fair to them. He's not being fair because he should be destroying all these other wicked nations around them, Damascus, you name it. All these countries that were surrounding the Philistines, the Amalekites. He should be destroying all these nations, but instead, he's bringing these nations that we don't even understand the language. They're from Persia. They're from the Assyrian Empire. We don't even know what they come up to us and they're talking to us. We don't even understand them. You're treating them better than us. So you're not fair. And God's like, I'm not fair. You're not fair because the deal was I will bless you immensely if you follow my commandments. You guys even swore on it. You promised me. And we sacrificed lambs and rams and sheep and goats and bulls and everything, and we made a blood covenant. And you promised that you would follow me. And even Joshua, my servant, said, choose this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And you guys agreed. You said, we're going to do the same thing. We're with you, Joshua. But later, after Joshua died, they didn't fulfill their obligations to wipe out all these other nations out of there. There were 6 more to go. And an angel appeared to them and said, why haven't you wiped these people out? They're going to be a thorn the rest of your lives. You didn't listen. So they never did fully conquer that land until Solomon. And after King Solomon's son, the kingdom was ripped away from him. After 40 years of Solomon ruling, the kingdom was ripped away from him, and Israel has never been the same since, till recently, till the 40s. So again, the whole purpose of Jacob's trouble is to bring Israel back to God. How do you do that? Well, you got to bring them to their knees. Not saying God is bringing them to their knees, but he uses other nations. Why do you think he used Israel to defeat the Amorites? It wasn't because Israel was more righteous than the Amorites. It was because the sin of the Amorites actually hit the ceiling. God had to deal with them. So he used Israel to deal with the Amorites. They were to wipe them out because they were wicked. And the Canaanites, they were wicked. But Israel chose not to do that. So God had to call an audible, and he says, I will save you. I will be your savior. There is no other savior but me, meaning he's the one that came up with the plan. He used his branch. Who's his branch? Christ. That's his son. He said, I will use my branch, and my branch will restore the 2 nations back to one. There's not going to be any more 2 nations. And in fact, the branch is going to draw these people back to that land. All of them. All 12 tribes are going to be restored one day in the future. We don't see that here. We don't see Israel at peace. In fact, we see the opposite. We see nations coming against Israel almost every day. It's in the news now. Why? Because Israel is not a monarchy. This is important. You got to grasp this, because otherwise it's going to be confusing to you. Israel is a democracy, meaning they don't need God right now. They don't. Why? They got the Iron Dome. They got David's sling. They got Arrow 2. They got Lavender. They got all the weapons. They also have, as I've talked about in other videos, the Samson option. What's the Samson option? Well, when they get overwhelmed, they just have to push a button and the whole Middle East is destroyed. They don't want to use that. But when Israel keeps promising that they're never going to go back to being someone else's prisoner or someone else's slave ever again, better believe that they're serious, and better believe that they have the weaponry to be able to do that. But in Zechariah, it says 2/3 of Israel is going to be destroyed. When do you think that happens? Everybody right now, including North America, is saying that God is going to protect Israel and they're not going to be touched. They're not going to be harmed. And yet in Zechariah, it shows that 2/3 are going to get wiped out. So my question to you is, when do those 2/3 get wiped out? When? The most logical place to put that would be inside of Jacob's trouble. That's the logical place to put it. Because I'm telling you, all hell breaks during Jacob's trouble. It's a fun time. When you get hints from Jesus Christ saying there's never going to be a time like it in the future, and there's never been a time like it in the past, that should give you a hint that it is going to be very, very bad. That should be your hint. So when is the worst time in the history of mankind? It's Jacob's trouble. It's not the flood. The flood was really bad, and it got the whole world wiped out except for one family. What's worse than that? It's Jacob's trouble. And Jesus said it's going to be very similar to those days. So people give Israel a pass right out of the gate. They say, well, it doesn't matter if they don't worship God. God will intervene. When God is saying in his word, he's going to turn a blind eye and let them be defeated almost to the brink of extinction. Why? How do we know this? Well, read the book of Revelation. There's only 44,000 sealed. You can argue with me and say, oh, it's more than 144,000. Okay, it's more. It's not a lot more, but it's more. God's promise is that Israel would not be destroyed. Why? Because the other nations would get all excited and act like drunkards because Israel's destroyed off the map. So God said, no, I'm not going to let that happen. Sorry, ain't going to happen. But it's not because of Israel being righteous. That's what we mix up. We go, oh, they're righteous. That's why God's intervening. No, he's waiting till they ask him to help them out. You can argue with me all day long and you could say, no, Israel's never going to be defeated, but you're not using scripture then. You're making stuff up. When the Bible clearly says, especially in the Old Testament, and Jesus said, it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. You're going to be surrounded. So when does that happen? After the millennium kingdom? That's when Satan rounds up all the people. But we're talking about the Antichrist and the false prophet. When does that happen? Well, it has to happen at the end of the 7 years. Jacob's trouble. At the end of it. That's Armageddon. It's not before. You can't have Armageddon before Jacob's trouble. You have it after. Why? Because we know that the Antichrist must show up somewhere inside of Jacob's trouble. And the most logical place is between the beginning of Jacob's trouble and the halfway mark. That's where he pops up. He doesn't pop up at the end. He pops up somewhere in Jacob's trouble. he causes a deal for the whole world to reinforce a peace deal, and Israel buys into it, and then halfway through they get betrayed, and they go, uh-oh, this is not the guy that we thought he was. That's all through the Bible. It's everywhere. Just look in Daniel. It's there. It's in Revelation. We see Israel being defeated left, hand, right, and center. But for some reason, with our goggles, we go, Israel's never going to get touched. I don't know how we skip over all the prophetic scriptures saying that Israel's going to be in hard times. We just skip over it for some reason. I don't know where that comes from. Maybe it's a Western theology or something that comes up where it says, no, you say anything against Israel, you're cursed. Don't know where that says anywhere in the Bible. I haven't found it yet. Oh, you mean Abraham? That's what you're talking about. Oh, okay, that's different. Just read it again. Israel is going to get one day in the future, but, my friends, that's when Jesus Christ comes. Because if he doesn't come, no flesh will be saved. I'm not making this stuff up. You can't have Jesus return before Jacob's trouble. There's no point. They haven't learned their lesson. What's their lesson? Well, their lesson is exhaust all your resources, go to your gods of wood, of stone, stubble, wood, hay, stubble. Go to exhaust them first. Those gods to save you first, then give me a call. Give me a phone call. That's scripture. I'm not making this stuff up. It's in the Old Testament. God's telling Israel to get out of your own jam by using your own ways, your own means. The only ones that he did not accept is Egypt, when Israel made a deal with Egypt saying, protect us. We'll go live with you guys in Egypt. And God's like, no, you are forbidden to go to Egypt to live there. Why? Well, think about all the rituals. The Passover. What's that for? Well, that's to celebrate coming out of Egypt. You don't want Israel to live in Egypt, and you don't want Egypt to protect Israel. You want God to protect Israel. So they were making a covenant with death saying, you protect us. And God's like, no, I disannul your covenant with death. In fact, I'm going to go into Egypt and wipe people out. I'm going to teach you a lesson that I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere, and I keep an eye on everything all over the world. And in fact, I'm going to be the one that's going to scatter you throughout the world until you learn your lesson. And one of the lessons is to give the land a rest for Sabbath, because they weren't letting the land rest. They were working 7 days a week for years. They never practiced any of the festivals. They didn't practice any of that stuff. So God said, I got to get rid of you guys. I got to get you out of that land in order to give it rest. And once that land is rested, then I'm going to bring you back. But we still have 1 week left. 1 week left. That's Jacob's trouble. And then Jesus Christ himself is going to bring everyone back. Let's go to the comments. All right, let me know if I'm crazy here. If I'm crazy town. This thing in BC, Workington. Wow. Thank you. That's awesome. 2/3 will occur after the 1260. Yeah, somewhere, like it's not before is my whole point. It's not before. Like, the Antichrist has to show up somewhere in Jacob's trouble. To me, I feel like he shows up as a nice guy right at the beginning of Jacob's trouble. And then about halfway, 3.5 years, he turns on him. He betrays them. Turns on him. Let's see here. Let's see. Anthony Brainerd, the Coast AL Outpost, Cat. Welcome. Pambolina. Yeah, I kind of made a mistake with the time. It was going to be at 10 o'clock. And I looked at it when I logged into my account. And I'm like, another hour? I can't wait for an hour to talk, guys. So it's 9:30 right now. But from now on, we'll be back on track. I was out of the country for a bit. So Wi-Fi problems, issues, stuff. I just like, you know what? You guys deserve a little bit of a break from me. I can catch up on some reading. Went through, like I said, the first 5 books of the Bible, and diving into Numbers. I'm almost done Numbers. I should be done Numbers by tomorrow, and then I'll be what's the last one? Deuteronomy. I'll be done that probably Wednesday, Thursday, and then I can get into Judges, which will be pretty good, pretty fun. And then from there, it's easy. It's easy all the way up until Isaiah. That's smooth for me. Genesis to Isaiah, the beginning of Isaiah, is smooth sailing for me. Once I get to Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, I start to slow down a little bit because it's heavy. It's heavy, man. There's lots of stuff coming against Israel. Like, you'd almost think at one point, you're like, God, it kind of feels like you're an anti-Semite a little bit. You're kind of hard on the Israelites. You're kind of hard on them. It's kind of weird. And then you think about, oh yeah, it's because of the covenant that they made at Mount Sinai. They promised not to worship Molech and other gods. Oh yeah, they promised not to marry Canaanite women, and they did that. Oh yeah, they promised not to intermarry, and they did all that. Right in the book of Joshua. Judges. They're intermarrying. It's crazy. It's just everywhere. They're intermarrying to the point where one tribe almost got extinct. Because they made a vow not to give their children, or their daughters, I should say, to the Benjamites to marry when they're of age, of course. They said, no, we made a vow. You Benjamites, you guys are wicked. You're wicked. And we're not giving you our wives. So imagine the 11 tribes saying, no go zone. You don't get any of our daughters. The Benjamites were on the verge of extinction. That's how bad things got in the book of Judges. And we just skip over it, and we're like, oh yeah, it's just kind of hard to read. So I'm just going to go over to the book of Ruth, and we're going to hang out in Acts, little John, maybe a little bit of Genesis, and halfway through Exodus, we stop. We start flipping through to Proverbs or Psalms, or maybe Song of Solomon, something like that. We just skip over everything. I'm telling you, think about it. Leviticus is probably one of the best books in the Old Testament. Why? 99% of it was written by God. What? I thought the whole Bible was written by God. Yes, but there's a lot of stories in the other books. Take, for example, Ruth. Lots of stuff going on there, but it's about Ruth. Leviticus is God telling Moses, here's what I need you guys to do in order for me to dwell with you. And that's why I say 99% of it is dictated from God to Moses. And yet we skip over and read 65 other books, and we won't read Leviticus. We go, oh, it's too much blood. It's not a lot of blood. Think about going to, if you want to go get meat, you don't think the butcher is going to butcher a cow for you? What do you think they're doing in the back of every grocery store? They're butchering animals. I don't know if you knew this, but that's what they do. It's like a gore fest at all the grocery stores, but we have no problem going and buying chicken, ham, steak, lobster, everything. We have no problem. But for some reason, Leviticus, when a guy commits a sin against God, and God's like, hey, I know you have 20 rams, but I need you to take one of those rams because you're a leader, and I need you to sacrifice that lamb in order for me to forgive your sin. And the leader's like, yeah, but that means I have 19. What happens if I lose those through winter or whatever and I only have 10? Well, maybe you shouldn't do what you're doing, because as a leader, those rams go first. If you are a civilian, if you will, you have to give up a female lamb. And if you do that enough, you're going to be borrowing lambs from other tribes because you're sinning too much. You're not overcoming. And you lost all your sheep because you lose all the females, you can't expand. So this is what's going on in the first 7 chapters of Leviticus. Look, if a priest sins, this is what he's got to give up. If if a leader sins, this is what he has to give up. If a civilian sins, this is what they got to give up. Part of their herd. They got to take it and get it sacrificed. That causes, it's almost like a fine. Think of it like a fine that actually hits their pocketbook. That's what this is for. And Aaron and his sons are making atonement for Israel so they don't get wiped out, so God can live with them. That's what the first 7 chapters are for. Then we get into all the diseases that could happen if you're entering into a land or they're practicing cannibalism or they're sacrificing their firstborn, dedicating it into the house of the home that you're about to live in, and there's mold everywhere from children being killed. And you got to scrape the mold, and you got to remove the bricks, and then you let it settle for a week. And if the mold comes back, you bulldoze the whole place. If it doesn't come back, you plaster it and you make it all nice. And you got to empty all the contents out of the house, take all the furniture out of the house, clean it, scrape it clean where there was mold, take those bricks out, replace it with new bricks, test it out. Priest comes in, checks it out. It's like, hey, this house is good to go. You guys are good. Why? Because they didn't build the home. They didn't build it. They moved in to these big houses. Some of them were probably built by giants as well. Huge homes. People get disease from their clothing. So there was rituals for that. Hey, take your clothing, wash it. If the mold comes back, burn it. Get rid of it. If a guy is leprous, kick him outside the camp, give him a week, come back to the priest, let the priest check him out. And if it's just a certain type of, if the hair turns black, it's a different type of, it's just a scab. But if it turns white, this is a spreading leprosy. You got to keep them outside until it's healed. This is all in Leviticus. He's teaching people how to take care of themselves so that they don't eat these weird creatures like bats and mice that carry diseases and wipe out entire communities. Because imagine into a foreign land and you just see some mice and you're like, oh yeah, this is good. Get sick and die because they carry diseases. Eating bats, raw bats, whatever. God's teaching them what to eat, what their diet should be. Don't eat the pig, even though it's got a cloved hoof. It doesn't chew the cud. It just basically swallows the food. So that means its diet is crap. It eats anything. You put a tin can in front of that pig, it will eat it. It'll eat chickens. It'll eat whatever. Doesn't matter. It'll get used to eating whatever you put in front of it. That's why you don't eat pigs back then. You don't eat them because their diets are ridiculous. And you don't eat ostriches, or you don't eat eagles. You don't eat vultures because they're chewing on dead meat. It's a crazy diet. Instead, you go after the fish that have fins on it. You don't go after the fish that are dwelling on the bottom of the ocean. Why? Because they eat all this crap that floats down. Their diets are horrible. Centipedes, all these creatures. But locusts can eat because they have legs above them. They don't have legs above them, don't eat them. And then you get into banking. How much is this person worth? Well, this guy is 50 years old. Okay. Well, he's worth about 30 shekels. How much is a shekel? Well, depending on how much silver we have in storage, that's what the value of that shekel is at that time frame. So because you're 50, you get 50 shekels for your loan. Very much, and you agreed, you promised to pay back that loan in such and such time, because don't forget the year of Jubilee is coming up and all loans are forgiven. So you have, depending on the year of Jubilee, let's say it's year 10, you have 40 years left to pay that loan back. Have a good life. Paid back. And then they promise, they say, I'll pay this back within 3 years. I have a child that's 1 month old. Okay, you get 5 shekels. Oh, actually, I have 3 children. Okay, you get 15. I have a wife. Okay, you get 30. You get 30 shekels. I have a senior living in my home. Okay, you get another 30 for that one as well, or 15 or whatever. So all of a sudden they walk out of the sanctuary with like 150 shekels, which is a loan, so that they can go and buy land and they can start producing crops. They can buy tools, everything that they need. They can hire servants to work on their land. That's all in Leviticus. So now you have how to run a church, basically. You learn how to run a hospital, basically. The priests are like doctors. And then you also have a financial institution at the end of Leviticus. So now you got doctors, lawyers, priests all mixed in there. That's beautiful. It's, if you want to know how to run a nation and you're on a desert island, Leviticus would be a great book to have. Why? Because if you have transgressors, you know how to deal with them. If you love your neighbor as yourself, you don't have to worry about anything. If you steal and rob and all this stuff, like if you steal someone's ox and you get caught, you don't get killed. You got to give 5 ox to replace that one. It's a bad idea to be a thief. It's all in Leviticus. It's crazy, right? Bottom dwellers. Yeah, exactly. All right, who else is here? Linda. So yeah, so lots of stuff going on. So when we didn't even get to martial law. So now imagine now you have two factions. You have the Democrats and you have the Republicans. And I just listened to Donald Trump the other day. Who was it? He was on the Rubin Report. I believe he was interviewed by, I forget what the guy's name is, something Rubin. Interviewing him, and I'm like, man, Donald Trump knows business. He just knows it inside and out. And then I saw him with Dave Ramsey, and Dave Ramsey was asking him some tough questions. And it was like a conversation. You're like, wow, like these guys know business. So imagine having your president running the show and putting tariffs on other nations that are saying, you know what, we don't need to buy your stuff, but we want you to buy our stuff. And in fact, we want our plants in our country, not your country. And Donald Trump's like, no, we're going to give you tariffs like you won't believe, 50%, 60, 80, 100% tariffs until we equalize everything and it's a fair playing field. Our prime minister won't have a chance against Trump. Like when it comes to negotiations, we'll probably pay for everything on our end and then apologize to Trump and say, we're sorry. We're sorry if we offended you. We're just horrible at negotiating. But Trump, he's going to do everything for America. Like him or not, he is for America. He said he's going to turn on all the taps and they're going to be drilling and fracking like you can't even dream of. It's going to be all over the place. And it makes the Democrats nervous about this because according to them, we're causing all this harm and it's going to end the world overnight. Like this guy's the worst thing since Hitler. That's according to them. But yet, when it comes to other nations, like there's this one country that's really big, and they bulldoze mountains. Nobody says anything, and they can treat people unfairly. They could have surveillance everywhere, and nobody says anything. And they could cause the most COD, or what do you call it? Gas house emissions. What am I trying to say here? The most emissions in any country in the world is from one country. The most. And Greta's not visiting them. Instead, she would hang around in North America and say, we're the bad guys. We're the bad guys. Meanwhile, we're buying oil from other countries that haven't stopped. They're producing more oil, and we're buying from them. We're importing oil when we don't need to import oil. Like I come from Fort McMurray. There's enough oil there, enough bitumen, if you will, to last us for like 10,000 years. Yeah, you got to process all this stuff, but it's there. You can only get better with technology, but for some reason, it's okay for us to import oil. Doesn't make any sense to me. And why? Like I'm trying to remember what gas was in the U.S. in Phoenix. I think it was $5, 5 something. But here in Canada, it's we charge per liter, so it's $1.50 per liter. It's crazy, man. It's insane. Like during COVID, gas went down to like 40 cents. It just went right down. Anyways, greenhouse gases. That's what I'm trying to say. If you look at the charts, China's up there. India's up there. Nobody's saying anything about them. Instead of you're coming after US and you're saying, you guys got to get better. They're coming after Canada. You guys got to get better. Meanwhile, we have the tightest regulations on the planet. They're not going to Congo. They're not saying, hey, oh, look, here's little Jimmy. He's 6 years old. Oh, you got a little bit of red cobalt dust on you in your eyes. Oh, continue, Jimmy. That's okay. And then you have Chinese corporations all around Congo swapping this for cash, basically washing this red cobalt. Nobody says anything. They just turn a blind eye to that. It's like, no. The evil is in you not recycling your garbage. You need 20 bins in your front lawn. You need 20. You're evil. Not those companies that are buying red cobalt at the hands of 6-year-old children in Congo. That's not bad. But you taking your pop can and going, how dare you put it in the wrong bin, Shane? What you did is a crime against humanity. I think what is a crime against humanity is having these straws that dissolve in like a minute when you're trying to have a Slurpee. There is nothing more stressful than not having air conditioning in your car and trying to choke back a Slurpee when your straw dissolves. I'm telling you, that will cause Armageddon. Just that alone. But yet in Canada, it's ridiculous. Like if you can't even find a plastic straw anywhere. And it's all because of that one commercial or that one video where somebody shoved a straw inside of a turtle's nose. And then for about 20 minutes, the person kept jabbing the straw in and out. And the turtle's like going cross-eyed. Like, are you going to pull the thing out or aren't you? It was brutal. Like they just torture animals to try and make us feel bad. How many Downy commercials do we have to see where ducks are being bathed in oil? They take them somewhere, drown them in oil against their will. You can't tell me one baby duck wants to swim in oil and they're grabbing them and throwing them in oil and then they film a commercial. Do you know how many actors you got to get? How many cameras, the lighting, everything that goes behind it, the sound, the music that you have to have? You're torturing these animals to make us feel bad. You're torturing turtles by shoving straws up their nose. It doesn't make any sense. When we went to Phoenix, I didn't have to bag my groceries. they were using plastic bags. And they're like, thank you for coming to our store. Appreciate it. And then you go into a restaurant, plastic straws. Wow. They're not insane like us. All these little recycling bins everywhere. Like, are we crazy? Man, it's crazy. Yeah, the straws are the worst thing. Straws that break down right in the middle of a Slurpee. That is horrible. Imagine being a roofer, working all day, and you go buy a Slurpee and you show up, you grab your Slurpee and you start drinking it and your straw disappears. What are you going to do? Take the lid off? No, that's unethical to do that if you're drinking a Slurpee, because then you're going to have brain freeze because you got to have the ratio right. Got to have the ratio right. All right, so yeah. So the reason why I don't have anyone else on the panel tonight is because it is 10 o'clock my time. And everyone else is in the East Coast. And normally I have my shows on at 3 o'clock. So most people, like John Fortier, he's in bed. He's been in bed for hours already. He's been in bed for hours. So, but because I didn't want to leave you guys stranded, I want to talk about this martial law thing that's coming down the pipes. I would like to do a poll on here. Maybe I will do it in the community. I think, here's my opinion. I think if Trump doesn't get in, you're facing martial law. I just think it's going to happen. Why? Because the Democrats are going to think it's unsafe for them to be in the office because they're worried about Republicans retaliating. So they're going to just say it's unsafe. They'll just make up something. Like, we found straws that were made out of plastic, so it's now unsafe for any citizen to be walking the streets in the United States of America. And you don't need everybody to believe that. You only need a small percentage of people to believe a lie, and then everybody's going to jump on board and be like, oh, I'm so nervous. It's not safe for me to buy straws anymore. This is crazy. Yeah, I agree with martial law. I think it's great. Oh, by the way, you got to be at home by 5 o'clock at night. By the way, you can't be out before 8 o'clock in the morning. You have to be home unless you're at work. Like, there's consequences of that. So my guess, because it's just a guess, this is why you guys come to the Black Swan Revelations, because I take guesses. I take guesses at this stuff. I think either you guys will have martial law before the election, or martial law will come in if Donald Trump does not get in. If Donald Trump gets in, all bets are off, and I think you guys are in a better place. That's my guess. From Canada, I'm a Canadian. What do I know about U.S. politics, right? I think you guys will be in a better place, because eventually you got to get to a point where you're like, well, if Dave Ramsey, Ruben, Elon, all these people are saying that they want Trump and they're giving him support, eventually you're going to have to come to a point where you're like, there seems to be enough people saying that they back Trump. So if he gets in, I think good things can happen for you guys. I really do. I really do. But if you're fearful, you're going to be thinking like, that's it for you, United States of America. That's it. It's over. It is over. By November 5th, the whole world is done. It's finished. And I'm like, maybe not necessarily. We've seen worse. We've seen worse. You can't tell me that this is the worst that has ever happened to the United States of America. You cannot tell me that. When you have segregation in schools and buses and workplaces, where white people are on this side of the street and black people are on this side, and police officers are clubbing black people, that's pretty bad. You guys aren't there right now. You're not. There was peace in Arizona. There was peace everywhere I went. People were friendly. People were friendly there. A lot of Christians in Arizona. A lot of Christians. Maybe perhaps that's why there's lots of wealth there too. Something to think about. Something to think about. But I felt very safe there. Felt very relaxed. People were very nice, very accommodating. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that from you Americans. That this is the last president. Yeah, I've heard that this would be, I think he said this will be the last election if Donald Trump does not get in. If I'm correct in quoting him, because I did watch that interview with Elon Musk and Donald Trump that he said, oh, actually it was at the rally. It was at a rally that Elon was at, and he says, if you don't vote and Trump does not get in, this could be the last election ever. And I know one thing that Trump said that kind of I just put on the shelf. He said something. He said, I love you Christians. I love you Christians a lot, which tells me if he says that he's most likely not a Christian. If he says something like this, one thing to have fear, reverential fear of God, but that doesn't mean that you're a believer. That doesn't mean that you're a believer. But he said one thing. He said, you Christians, I love you Christians. I love all you Christians. And after election, you won't have to worry about anything. I'm like, huh, what does he mean by that? That's kind of interesting. Could be good or bad. Not sure. Don't have to worry about anything because you always have something to think about. There's always somebody doing something crazy, right? There's always something. When somebody tells you all your problems are going away, I have a problem with that. That's not truth. It's not truth. So you have to be careful about some of this. You have to be careful. But I think, honestly, I feel that if Trump gets in, that you guys will be in a better place. Now, if he gets assassinated, again, all bets are off for America. I don't know what's next. I don't know what's next. But this is why I have a channel like this called Black Swan Revelations, is I take guesses on here. I don't guess after the event. Like, it's not like September 12th where people are like, I knew that was coming. They're all there. It's okay. Well, where were you September 10th? I had no idea. Yeah, exactly. Welcome to the rest of the world. We don't know what the next Black Swan event is. We don't know what it is. But I could see martial law coming into the U.S. That to me, that only seems to make sense logically, because you would never see it coming. You can just do a poll across America and just say, do you think we'll ever go into martial law? They'd be like, no, it's not in our Constitution to go into martial law. You have to have an election. Well, if you have martial law, you don't have to have an election. That's what people don't understand. Is martial law is to protect the people from whatever's going on, aliens, Nephilim, giants in the land, whatever it is. Martial law is to protect people until the government feels like it's safe for you to go back outside. They can have whatever reason. They could say, well, this butterfly, we saw a butterfly in California flicker its wing, and it's like, this is bad for the rest of America. And people will be like, yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. Lock us up. Lock us up in our house. That's fine with me. There are a percentage of people that will do that. And you don't need to win everybody over to instill martial law. It can happen overnight. It can happen November 4th, martial law. So if you come back to this channel on November 4th and you see an event like this happening, you can say, oh, you know what? Shane was onto something. Won't do me very good because probably all our YouTube channels will probably be shut down by them. Or I could see November 6th, not November 5th. It'll be November 4th or November 6th. November 4th, if they're worried that Trump is going to have an overwhelming support with votes. I could see November 4th being the first day of martial law. If Joe Biden gets it, or Joe Biden, if Kamala Harris, I just can't see it. It doesn't make any sense to me that she would get in. I can't, no matter how hard I analyze things, I can't see how she would get in if people aren't voting for her. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You could say, well, that would mean it's voter fraud if she gets in. Do you want to go down that road twice? Do you want to go down that road twice? Because if you do, you're talking civil war. So the 3 days, November 4th, 5th, and 6th, could be martial law, could be civil war, or it could be nothing. It could just be Trump getting in and that's it. Don't know. But if he doesn't get in, I feel like that's going to cause a ripple. I feel it that this is not good. It's not going to be good if he doesn't get in. I've never felt that with other presidency. Obama gets in, it's like, oh yeah, it kind of sucks, but you know what? He speaks really well. Bill Clinton's in, yeah, like, did he? He had like a cigarette that was in his hand, but did he actually inhale? I don't know. It's a good question, right? People are always back and forth on all that stuff. And that's how we are. We're fickle that way. But this time I feel like, again, a lot of feelings here, that if Trump does not get in, it's not going to be good. I don't know how else to explain it. But if Trump gets in, I think you guys have a fighting chance. If he doesn't, if it looks like it's going to be a landslide, martial law, November 4th, which is, what day is that? What day is November 4th? Does anyone know out there? Yeah, that would be, it's possible. It's possible for the rapture to come. It's very possible. I think one of the mechanisms as well that you would probably have to look at is what's going on in Israel. If they start pushing the other nations, let's just say there's a handful of nations that say, no, we're gonna try and take out Israel. I think you could basically start the clock that we're out of here as the church, because they're gonna try and take them out, and they're gonna succeed to taking out a majority, and they're going to succeed in actually capturing. Don't think that doesn't change things when you see on CNN Israelis being captured in their own land. That's going to cause a huge panic. So I think that's also a bit of a mechanism that when you see that happen, you could start the stopwatch that we're out of here. Because that, to me, is the beginning of Jacob's trouble, where they get overwhelmed. And they're not able to use the Samson option because they get captured, whatever. They have to sign a deal, whatever. The Antichrist comes in, helps them out from who knows where. It could be from the inside out. Don't know. Jesus was betrayed by one of his own, so why wouldn't you have someone else betray Israel from the inside? Like, that's the best way to betray someone, is when they don't see it coming. It's easier to manage your enemies. It's not easy to manage your friends, because you don't know who's going to stab you in the back. So that's why I think the Antichrist being on the scene will be more of an inside job. Just my guess. What are your guys' thoughts? We're going to wrap this up pretty quick. Let's see here. Neutral. Have the guesses. I actually had Amy sent me an envelope. I haven't looked at it. I got to put it in an envelope. I should put this in an envelope. But I'm already giving you guys my predictions. But I'll read Amy's on like November 6th or November 7th if we're still here. I do feel like doing, like, there's a lot of emergency kit commercials going on in the United States right now. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. What's it called? Uh, what's the kit called? Basically, the idea is you have what's the horse pea that you guys like to drink in America? What's that stuff called? I forget what it's called. It's a big name. Anyways, you drink this horse pea or whatever all these tablets are. It's actually an emergency kit now. Remectin, Remectin, something like that. You guys know what it is. Anyways, they're selling these kits for $45 in the US. So I thought about having some kind of emergency kit for after the rapture. You can have something like USB thumb drives, a little note saying, hey, we didn't get abducted by aliens. We actually got raptured. Read Romans, read 1 Corinthians. Is it 1 Corinthians 11? I wish John Fortier was here. I think it's 1 Corinthians 11, 1-4. I think. Maybe it's chapter 1. Basically, that tells you exactly how to be saved. And maybe I'd put a little video in the thumb drive as well saying, look, this is what actually happened. If you're watching this video right now, it's because we got raptured. But there's still hope for you. The hope is that you got to avoid the Antichrist. You got to avoid him. Don't take the mark of the beast. Don't take any of these, what are they, yellow 5, yellow 6. You guys ever hear about that stuff that you guys got going on in the U.S.? You guys are crazy, man. You have red, what is it? Red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, and blue 1. Horrible stuff. It's horrible. Like, we don't have that in Canada. Other countries have banned that stuff, but for some reason, you guys like your petroleum candies. I don't understand it, but it's all over the place. I even had some on an airplane. I'm cracking me open some M&Ms, and all of a sudden I'm like reading the ingredients, like red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, blue 1. What? It's bad stuff. Very bad, very bad. Don't. It's in all your cereals. Don't. I'm telling you, don't let your kids eat it. Apple Jacks, Fruit Loops, all that stuff. Anything with dye in it. Very bad, very bad. You Americans are in trouble. You're in trouble. Read Psalm 118. Sure, I can do that. Yeah, guys, big deal. We can't understand why you guys wanted social health care. Big deal. Okay, let's see here. 118, Psalm 118, 8, and then I think I'm going to call it a night. Let's see. Psalm 118. Here we go. Psalm 118. See how fried my brain is right now? What did we say? Psalm 118, verse 8. Verse 8. King James Version. There we go. It is better to trust in the Lord than put confidence in man. I'm going to copy that verse. I like it. I like it. I like it. Let me put this up here. A little banner. Boom. Psalm 118. Boom. There it is. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. 100%. We can put all our confidence in the Lord. 100%. All right. So any quick questions, comments, anything? Yeah, ivermectin. That's it. They have these kits now that you can buy for $45 USD, and you can have a kit. It's like a survival kit in case COVID comes back, because I think they're worried a little bit in the States about COVID coming back. Round 2. Darcy, you sent me an email. Yes, I'll check it out, bro. I will check it. Read Psalm 118. Okay, the gospel, 1 Corinthians 15. That's the one. How that Christ died for our sins, and according to scriptures, how he shed his blood for all sins, was buried, and rose again on the third day according to the scriptures. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. Let's put that up. That's what I was thinking about. I knew it was somewhere in the Bible. John Fortier always quotes that. Ivermectin has always been used in medicine. Why did I think it was horse pea? Why did I think it was horse pea? Is that just a rumorville? Let's see what else is here. Let's see. Thoughts on the Rapture. Okay, November 6th or 10th if it is this year. Yeah, I agree. I think that would be probably, for me, the highest watch time this year, because I think it'll kind of dispel a little bit after the election, because I think there's a lot of hype right now going, oh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? If things go south and you get martial law, I'm telling you, man, we're minutes away. Because how do you not, this might be a double negative here, but if you have people in their homes and a huge percentage of them disappear, how would people say it was the government? Or how would people say, how would they prove that it was a rapture? It'd be very hard to prove because everybody's in their homes and you wouldn't know. For days, weeks, months, years, you would not know what happened to those people. And if you have artificial intelligence where you can clone people, you can make them say they said something against the government, and all of a sudden these Christians that are actually raptured, they could say something like, yeah, no, this person committed suicide, this person died, he ran away, he fled the country, he's in prison, he's on trial, and people just be like, yeah, that's cool, let's can I watch another episode of Friends? Can I just skip all this stuff? The reason why I bring that up is because I watched The World We Left Behind again for a second time. And man, there's lots of stuff going on in there. And I actually figured this out. A little bit of a spoiler here. The girl that was obsessed with wanting to watch Friends, while I think you can almost pose an argument that the rapture happened and then all hell broke loose in the United States because there's people missing all over the place. They're just gone. And it seems like only the non-Christians are left. That's what it felt like anyway. And this one little girl was obsessed with Friends all through the show. She's like begging. But I think at the end, because of her wanting to see Friends, she found a home that had Friends. She actually saved her family indirectly, because they could live now in a bunker, because that house, not only did it have Friends, but it had food, it had shelter, it had a safe house, it had everything in there. That's kind of how the movie ends. Sorry if I wrecked it for you, but it's been around for a year, so that's your fault. That's your fault. We do spoilers on here. I don't know if you guys knew that. We do spoilers. All right, good show though. Good show. Why is Obama exactly? That's one other interesting thing. He actually he put a lot of money into that movie. And I'm telling you, as a Christian, when you watch it, you're like, this feels very after the rapture. AR, after rapture. You got BC, before Christ. We got AD, was it Annual Domini, the year of our Lord? And now you have AR. Who knows if that's going to be a new time, AR1 or AR2 or whatever, because think about it. The Antichrist comes on the earth and his goal is to change the times. This is in Daniel. That's what he hopes to do, is change the times. So why would he do that unless some black swan event happened, which I believe the greatest black swan event to hit mankind will be the rapture. Why? Because nobody's seeing it coming, especially non-Christians. Like, yeah, we don't know what you're talking about. And even Christians are debating whether or not the rapture is going to happen after everything is over, which doesn't make any sense. It's more what they call it, a rapture, but really what post-tribers believe in is a procession where we go up and we go down, we make a U-turn. That's what they believe, that basically because of Roman law, that for whatever reason, I don't know why you would use a Roman law to back up scripture, but a Roman law where the king comes in and everybody is like welcoming the king. I know they're trying to use the triumphal entry, but you got to understand that it was Jesus' disciples that were leading him in. And he probably had hundreds, if not 1,000 or more disciples by the time he went into Jerusalem. And it stirred up all of Jerusalem that they're wondering what is going on. So that tells you there are unbelievers there going, what is going on here? And the disciples said, this is Jesus Christ of Nazareth coming in here. So they were declaring him to be a king by putting their clothes and their robes and their palm branches down to declare him to be their king. But the people in Jerusalem are like, what's going on? This is craziness. So you can use that as an example and say, oh yeah, that's what's happening is we're going to disappear. We're going to be caught up into the clouds, and people are going to go in 1 nanosecond. They're going to be like, oh, what? Oh, they're here. They won't even know what happened. It doesn't make any sense. Because you still have Armageddon to deal with. You still have the Antichrist. You still have a false prophet to deal with. So why would you rapture people up to the clouds and come down? It doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense to clear the runway and have people go to heaven for 7 years. Because we see this in Revelation that there are pockets of people worshiping, multitudes, I should say, of people worshiping. You can't even count. In heaven, not on earth, in heaven. So that tells you there's people living in heaven. So how did they get there? Well, most likely the rapture, or they died, or both. Died and raptured and died. They're in heaven. We know this. So it doesn't make any sense to go up and down when Jesus Christ is leading the way with the armies from heaven coming down to why? To attack the Antichrist and take him out. And he gets ejected into the lake of fire immediately, and so does the false prophet. And they'll be there for 1,000 years. That's when Jesus Christ reigns on earth. So I think it's prep school in heaven for 7 years. We're there, the church, the body of Christ. We had nothing to do with Jacob's trouble. Zero. So he separates us, just like the Levites got separated from the Israelites to take care of the tabernacle. They weren't supposed to go off to war. They didn't go off to war. Instead, they protected the tabernacle with their swords. Anybody came to attack the tabernacle, they would take them out. But they didn't get numbered for the war. Instead, they got numbered so that they can get rewarded by getting shekels. Whenever there was a surplus, they got 5 shekels for each person that was dedicated to the Lord, because the firstborns were to be separated to God. And the Levites represented the firstborn. Instead of having the firstborn of every tribe be taking care of the tabernacle, God said, I will instead use the Levites for the purpose. So if you have let's say for the sake of argument, 100,000 firstborn males between 20 and 50, I want you, Moses, to count how many Levites you have. And if you're short, like let's say you had 99,000 Levites and 100,000 male firstborn Israelites from the 11 tribes, then the difference would be 1,000. So you go 1,000 times 5 shekels. That's what the Levites would get, and they were instantly wealthy because of that. Anyways, so if the Levites could be separate and not go to war, why don't you think that something like the church, which is Jesus Christ's baby, if you will, this was something that was kept secret from before the foundation of the world? Because if the principalities, powers, rulers of the air knew about it, they wouldn't have crucified him. They would have let him bleed out. They would have let him die of an old age. But instead, they didn't know. Tells you the devil doesn't know everything. Doesn't know everything. Doesn't know where Christ was going to be born. He knew approximately, didn't know the time, nothing. Why? Because he was created. Christ was not created. He's eternal. And he had a plan, and he kept it close to his bosom. And once he died and rose again on the third day, he was able to dish out gifts. What are those gifts? It's eternity. We have seats in the heavenly places right now. Paul talks about that in Ephesians. We're seated in heavenly places. This is a good thing. We are eternal. So if Christ died on a cross for us, why do you think we need to go to war against the Antichrist without him? Why? Doesn't make any sense. That Jacob's trouble is all about bringing Israel back. How? You got to exhaust all their weapons, all their dependencies on every other nation to help them, and all their weapons and all their money. You got to deplete that. Got to get rid of that so that they go, oh, there's nothing else. There's only God. Come, rescue, save us. That's when Jesus Christ comes back. When they're on their knees. When they ask him to come back. He's not going to come back before. If they don't need him, why would he come back? Doesn't make any sense. All right. 14 people changed seats in the Butler. No, I did not. Obama has changed the times. Yeah, I don't know if he's the Antichrist. Are things going to get better or worse? Like I said, most people will say worse because they'll read Matthew 24 and say that. But I think if Trump gets in, it'll be better for America. It doesn't necessarily mean it'll be better for Canada. We have our own issues. If other nations can turn things around, let's just say, I mentioned a while ago El Salvador. I forget what the president's name of El Salvador was. If he could turn that country around, which was known as the most violent country in the most violent nation in the world, and he put gang members in prison, cleaned up the streets and everything, and now it's considered the safest place on earth to live, why do you count the United States of America out? Why do you say we're done or you guys are done? Why do you say that so easily when other nations can turn around? When Nineveh turned around instantly, when Jonah said, you got 40 days, like this place is going to be destroyed. Why can't the U.S. turn around? Why are we always doom and gloom? Why is it always doom and gloom? So I'm an optimist. I think you guys can turn the ship around. I don't think it's too late for you guys. Why? There's too many Christians in the United States. There's too many. You have a lot of Christians. You can turn the ship around. I'm more worried about Canada right now. I know there's a lot of Christians in Canada, but we're hiding a lot. And things are just getting snowed over. The way our government system is run is different. Our judges are different than you guys. Our judges don't get voted in. Maybe it's not like that for you guys either. But basically how it works here in Canada is our prime minister can look at someone that's a civilian, a citizen of Canada, and say, this person comes highly recommended and I endorse him. I strongly endorse him. Then, the speaker, I think it is the speaker of the House, can say, okay, based on your recommendation, I accept. And this guy doesn't have anything to do. Nobody voted for him, but he is now a judge over one of the provinces, one of the areas. And he could be Chinese, he could be East Indian, he could be from any other country here in Canada. And he could be from a representing a company, and he could speak on behalf of the company, and we have no say. We can't vote him out. He's for life. So I think in the U.S., you guys do things a little bit different. I don't know if you can vote in your judges. I can't remember. I know the president nominates judges and stuff, but I thought you guys had to vote them in. I'd have to look that up. In Canada, there's no voting. There's no voting. These people are in till they die or till some criminal activity happens and they get removed. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. Seems like far more Christians. You guys, well, appeared that way in Phoenix. Like I'm telling you, I went to a church that was like, there's like 30,000 people there, like all together and all the campuses and all the stuff. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. It felt like you're like in heaven. Like everybody was all nice and Christians and they had everything nice there. Like it was just perfect. It's crazy, right? So, and everybody is rich. It's just, I've never seen anything like that. But yeah, there's a lot, man. There's a lot of Christians in Phoenix. I didn't know that. I didn't think about that too much. But yeah. So if you think about Sodom and Gomorrah, God said, I'm not going to destroy the nation if I find 10 righteous people. And in fact, he didn't destroy it until he found 4 people, and he moved them out of that area. Is it 4? Yeah, 4 people. And could have been 6. And then he destroyed it. So I don't think the U.S. is going to get destroyed when the Christians are here. This is why I believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. You got to get rid of us first. Then you can start showing your wrath on earth. Because there's no reason for Jesus to die twice, right? Can we all agree with that? Yes. Okay. So why would I say die twice? Well, he finished everything on the cross. So he doesn't need to die again. We have everything in him. We're saved. We're eternal. All this stuff. So why do we need to get dragged through the mud to prove ourselves? We don't need to do that. The church does not need to prove itself. Christ proved himself. That's the difference. And Israel has to prove itself. It has to prove itself. How? It has to turn to God. Right now, it's a democracy. It's not a monarchy. It's pretty clear. Ask any Israeli on the street. They'll just be like, yeah, I won't touch the New Testament with a 10-foot pole. I don't like Christians. I don't want Christians in our area. I don't want them helping us out. They can give us money, but I don't want them helping us. That's what they'll say. Or those that say something, yeah, they're okay, but push comes to shove, they don't want us there. Do you think they're going to read the New Testament if you went and preached to them? No, they're going to be like, no. And they don't read the Old Testament either, which is crazy, right? So for some reason, we give them a pass because they live in that country. We say that they know more about Scripture than we do when they don't read. They don't read the Bible. They don't read the Old Testament. If they do, they trust in their rabbi to teach them everything because their rabbi speaks Hebrew. They don't speak Hebrew, not all of them. And then they're like, well, we just trust the rabbi that he did his due diligence, reading the Talmud, not reading the Old Testament. That's a problem. I think it's a problem even for Christians if you don't read the whole Bible. You have to read the whole Bible. Then you can get a pulse of what God is doing. Anyways, yeah, I think so. I think we have to be gone. It makes the most logical sense to me. If we just looked at it logically, you got to get rid of us. People will use scripture verses like, well, only the wicked get raptured up or get plucked up. And it's like, well, you're not reading the verse correctly. Like all you have to do is be in grade 6 and you could read that Jesus talks about the tares and the wheat. Basically, bind up all the tares first. Can we agree with that? Bind them up first, and then put the wheat in my barn. So what does that tell you? Does that tell you take the tares up into my barn? No. Bind them up so that you could see the wheat now. You tie up all them and you put it aside, and then you take all the wheat, you put it into my barn, then you come back and you torch the place. Why? Because it's weeds, it's tares. You don't care about what all that, like I'm talking about a farmer. You don't care because you took all the good stuff off. Now you just burn the place. So with Jacob's trouble, we're not saying burn Israel down. What we're saying is when you remove the church, God can now focus on Israel. And there's going to be 144,000 preaching, and there's going to be an angel going around preaching as well. It's a little bit of a different gospel. It's like, don't take the mark. Anybody who takes the mark is sentenced instantaneously to a lake of fire. That's a different kind of a message. That's a different kind of good news. a different kind of a gospel. It's not what we're in right now. We're under the age of grace. Why? Because we have everything. We know everything. We can watch it on YouTube. We can watch people like my channel, other channel, Bob's channel, and Uptime Community Church, End Time Dreams and Visions, John Foytier and his Bible studies, Gary, Not So Random, Rick, like we're all saying the same thing. You have to be saved. There's only one way. It's through Jesus Christ. We're all saying the same thing. So there's no excuse. You can't go, well, I didn't know. I've been watching over 1,000 videos of Black Swan, and he never once talked about Jesus Christ. Not true. I talk about him pretty much in every video. You need to know Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior. And once you know him, you need to read his word inside and out. And it'll grow on you, and you'll love it. You'll even love the book of Leviticus. All right, let's see here. I think that's it for today. Happy Thanksgiving to the Canadians for tomorrow. Us Canadians, we celebrate a little bit early. Celebrate before your election. You guys, I think, what's yours? November 25th or something? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you guys celebrate Thanksgiving just a little bit more than Christmas. Like it's a big deal. It seems like Thanksgiving is more of a big deal than Christmas in the United States, is my humble opinion. That's what it feels like. All right. That's it for today's show. Hope you guys got something out of it. If you have, subscribe to this channel. Click the thumbs up. Appreciate it, because that tells YouTube that you like this type of video. And if you give it a thumbs up or a comment, it tells YouTube that you're interested in this, and it'll show it to more people. So thank you. Also double check, make sure you're still subscribed, because I know what happens. This happened to my mom. She got unsubscribed, so she had to resubscribe. So just double check that. Make sure the YouTube isn't doing anything funny as well. So anyways, guys, thanks a lot for showing up. Appreciate you guys a lot. And I hope that you guys have a fantastic evening, and we'll see you in another video. Bye for now. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of doing a marathon. Trying to think when. Like, I'm talking like a marathon, like start maybe at 10 o'clock at night and then go to like 4 in the morning or something. I'm not sure when. Maybe it's the night of the election, November 4th. You know, watch some of the events that are taking place. I don't know. What do you guys think? Maybe I'll do a poll in the community. So watch for a poll. But I want to do something like that down the road, where it's just like we're just on for a long time. Not like 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever. I'd like to do that. One of the other things that I want to do is actually want to do a thorough Bible study on Leviticus, because I don't want it to come across like I know more than everyone else when it comes to Leviticus. But do you know of anyone else that has read the book of Leviticus 15 times in the last 3 years? If you do, let me know on YouTube. Let me know. Because usually people are more interested in picking books out of the Bible. Maybe they do a verse by verse, but even then, they come across Leviticus almost like, I don't know if there's somebody that has a common script. I don't know. It feels like it. Because every time, if you just go and do a little bit of research, you just type in Leviticus explained. The first 5 minutes is they'll say things like, nobody likes Leviticus. It's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of blood and guts. But what we're really looking at is God loves us and all this kind of stuff. And then they just skip over everything that's going on in Leviticus. I've never heard anybody say that it was like, it's like a religious center, a hospital, a bank. I've never heard that. Instead, I've heard crazy things like, oh, the shekels are dedicating people, they're sacrificing humans and all. I'm like, do they actually read Leviticus? Like, do they actually read it? Like, I think we should actually give it a serious study, because then later you'll know what Christ did for us. I think that's the logical conclusion that you can get from a thorough Bible study. And I want to go through it verse by verse. But like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Leviticus is kind of tied into Exodus a bit, at least half of it. And Numbers is also tied into Leviticus, and so is Deuteronomy. So, man, that could take like a year just for that type of a Bible study. So I'm really trying to think about when and where and how I would do that, because there's so much to unpack in just those few books. Like, there's a lot going on. And I've even watched Jews teaching Leviticus, and it's like, it's dry bones. It's just dry bones. I'm like, wow, like, it's an exciting book when you understand what God is doing. Like, he's building a nation from scratch right out of Egypt. And I'm telling you, the foundation that you learn inside of Leviticus, it opens your eyes, it opens your mind. And I feel like I'd love to have a conversation with Jordan Peterson, but I even don't think that he reads the Old Testament as much as he lets on. I think he maybe has read Leviticus or Exodus maybe a couple of times, and then he just talks about psychology and different things. But when you press deeply, you go, wow, that's kind of surface level what you just talked about. Like, you're just talking about people. You're not talking about what God was actually instituting. So I would love to do a long video on Leviticus, and I think that's the only way to do it justice, really. That's what I feel. Anyways, let's see here. Yeah, like the video. Thank you guys for that. Yeah, Leviticus is great. Thanks, Darcy. Appreciate that. All right, everyone. Have a fantastic day, and we'll see you in another video. We'll see you, Lord willing, unless we get raptured tonight. We'll see you in another video. Bye for now.